This is Nourish You, the podcast where we question the traditional model of dieting and nutrition and focus on choice, fun, and health for the whole mind and body. It's all on the table and it all counts. I'm Jana Maurer, Rush Your Dietitian, and your host. Tell me a little bit about your story. So who are you? What do you do? Why does it matter?
Well, I'm a registered nurse, like you said, of 11 years. I have my master's. I still practice at the bedside as an ICU nurse. I've done nutrition coaching for clients one-on-one for the last a little over 2 years, helping people who are just tired of struggling with their weight, identify what their risk factors are and their vulnerabilities, educate them, and then I guide them with applications so that they can have sustainable weight loss and health management.
Yeah.
I started doing that, I guess, because my husband and I own a gym together, Alpha Family Fitness, and we started hosting like nutrition challenges. It's still pretty popular. That would last around 8 to 12 weeks. But I quickly realized that most people needed more than 8 to 12 weeks to really implement and process the changes that were needed. It was enough time to identify what their vulnerabilities were, but not enough time to at all lay the strong foundation for long lasting change. So that's kind of how I got here.
Why? So with being a nurse and then also being a gym owner, I feel like you guys are just like the triple threat. I feel like you have everything, right? Like from a clinical perspective, but then also the application perspective and also the movement perspective. So why did you get into nutrition in particular? Like, was there something that you implemented in your own routine that you saw a difference in, or like how did nutrition keep showing up for you in your day-to-day, routine?
That's a good question, because I think as a young woman in my early 20s, I was always active and I didn't really understand how nutrition kind of played a role in what I was searching for. I mean, obviously I was one of those that always wanted to stay, quote, skinny. But I also wanted to perform well too. And I always thought that performance only meant what I was doing in the gym. And I started doing my own little research, started applying some of the things that I was learning, changing the way that I was eating. And then I just started feeling better. And then it just kind of steamrolled down that way. And that's just kind of like why I guess the spark happened.
Yeah.
I'm going to start applying nutrition in with the 1 hour that I spend in the actual gym or doing some exercise.
Yeah. Well, and people ask that question, like, or the saying out there that, it's 80% nutrition, 20% activity, or is the ratio. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. But and I think that you'll appreciate this is when we're talking about nutrition, we're always talking about, oh, it's just eat these things, but we're not thinking about like the behavior aspect of what we do around our nutrition, our relationships with nutrition. And I think that matters almost equally just as much, because you can't really change your nutrition if you're not aware of your behavioral aspects and your relationship with nutrition.
Yeah, so true. I always, share with my coaching clients, like the first step is really getting curious about what it looks like, because oftentimes we don't even have an understanding like from a day-to-day perspective. So we have to bring that like mindfulness aspect to say like, what am I doing? And then from there, we can really start to form the behavior first and then continue to modify. Like, for example, like if someone's not eating breakfast, sometimes I don't care what they have for breakfast. I care that the behavior is that they're eating breakfast.
Yeah.
And then once we get that down, we can start modifying it to really meet those nutrition recommendations. But it's always the behavior that we oftentimes have to create first. And then we get, it's a stepping process, like we have to lay the foundation and then continue to build from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're a nurse in the ICU.
Yes.
How does that impact you in also what you're doing as a nutrition coach?
I think it helps me actually bring my experience, and I don't mean from like a clinical perspective. I mean seeing what I see, experiencing with my patients, the patient's family members, um, what they're actually going through, and being able to pull that into when I'm working with my one-on-one clients, saying this is real. Your risk factors projecting into the future could absolutely happen. I've experienced it myself, seeing it. And so just being able to pull that into other people's journey, it helps me actually make them more proactive versus reactive.
Yeah.
And so they're able to do early pivots before you're doing damage control.
Yeah. How do you motivate someone to be proactive or to be preventative when, technically speaking, maybe they haven't had anything go wrong? Like, how do you really motivate someone to want to care for themselves in those preventative ways, to not have to be in that reactive state?
Really having that the hard conversation of what does your life look like right now, and where it could potentially be going if you don't change things. Because it is, I think, like what you're saying is, if we haven't really experienced it, it doesn't really come to life. But if you know someone that you like and trust, that's seen it raw and real and can really put that in your face. I mean, not to sound like I'm trying to like scare anybody, but I am trying to bring the reality there on the table, make them aware, and plug some emotion into that. Like, what's the value of being able to be witnessing your children and being able to be engaged with your children, not just watching on the sidelines, or your grandchildren, or if you don't have children, there's other things that are important. Most people will have, they're like career driven. They have dreams and aspirations. And if they're not healthy, and they're putting themselves at risk, they're not going to be able to achieve those and feel fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially like now with just the rates of obesity or heart disease, for me, it's hard to believe that someone hasn't been impacted by something as of late. Like I distinctly remember, teaching in a class, and I asked, the class if they knew someone that had type 2 diabetes, and every single hand went up. So I feel like it just, as a population, this is something that is impacting us in many different ways. And our job as a coach and in this space is really to not, like you said, not scare people, but help motivate them and really engage them with that internal why of like, why would you like to do different? Like if this is something that doesn't look good to you, or is really fear, like it's a fear based too. Like if this is something that you fear, like how can we really tap into that fear and change it up so that we can create a new, like a different a different outcome from it.
Yeah.
So, but it's hard because because also in our society, we have so many different options to almost choose the easier route, if you will.
Yeah. Everything is more convenient. And I think by nature, that doesn't mean that we're wrong for doing that. I think that we're naturally drawn to that. We just have to become aware of the convenience isn't always the answer
Yeah.
that we're looking for. The work has to be done, and it's well worth it as long as you are valuing the outcome on the other end.
Yeah. So the clients that you work with, like 9 times out of 10, what do most people come to you with that they are struggling to implement in their routine?
I would say it's 50-50 actually. I do. I mean, because people do see me as a registered nurse, so they come to me with a lot of like health concerns. And then I do talk about like weight loss too. So I have half of my group that I work with are just seeking weight loss, and then half of them are seeking help with, guidance in managing cholesterol or learning how to manage their diabetes, looking for accountability in those areas.
Mhm.
And they're all kind of like, if you think about it, because we were talking about like obesity and needing to lose weight, it all kind of overlaps together, because if you're going to be managing your weight and losing weight, you're reducing your risk factors, even if you don't have those conditions yet.
Yeah.
And most of the people who do already have those conditions, they are having some weight issues because
Yeah.
they do overlap so many times.
Do you feel like, and this is a hot topic, so I'll just say that, do you feel like someone can be at a higher BMI and still be healthy?
Uh, this is a really good question. Um, in terms, I guess you're probably talking about higher BMI being a body fat percentage, not somebody who's carries around a larger muscle mass.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big like distinction. There's a lot of talk out there, of, I've heard it said like healthy fat, where an individual's BMI, we're just strictly talking BMI, is elevated, but they are still healthy. And I'm just curious of your thought on that, when we do know there are additional risk factors with an elevated BMI. So I always, from that assessment perspective, what do you take into account with an individual?
I definitely think that it is setting them up for more risk factors in the future. I mean, just because let's say I do have an elevated BMR at this very moment, yeah, I could probably be healthy and not have like cholesterol levels or hypertension or diabetes. But if I continue with this, I mean, there's a reason why I have a higher BMI.
Right.
Whether it's being, diagnosed now or in the future, I mean, I do think that that correlates with someone's health in the
Yeah.
future or their risk factors. But I guess, who am I to identify or define healthy? Because healthy for me might be different for another individual.
Yeah.
Um, because, some people will say, well, my labs look fine, but I don't feel mentally healthy when I am driving towards a certain number on the scale, or they have mental attachments or emotional attachments to food. That, I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah. No, and I love expanding it, because this is one of my like pet peeves with just like media as a whole, is there's like this blanket statement that becomes black and white. And when we're really, us as practitioners, essentially, like in this space, our job is to really make it very gray, and really apply it to the individual. So I would say, it's an assessment tool, it's not a diagnostic tool, and there are many other variables that go into it, but it can be an indication that from a behavior perspective, some things could be shifted. So it could just be giving us some information of maybe what you are feeling. It doesn't necessarily mean, like, I know, like, and I'm sure with athletes, right? Like they have a higher muscle mass, and so 9 times out of 10, their BMIs are elevated, but they are healthy, they're strong, they're doing well. So I mean, that's where we really have to take it back and say, okay, what does this mean specifically for you? And not have it so black and white, to where we can really find that gray and implement into your lifestyle so that you are living the healthiest life you possibly can.
Right. That's why I asked too, because my husband, when we do our biometrics for our insurance, he always is elevated on the BMI, but he's not, I mean, he's not overweight in
Yeah.
terms of like body fat percentage.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting that they don't add the body fat, right? Like, I mean, because that would give us a way better, indication of a lot of things going on. But it is interesting because I feel like, it's out there more and more, especially with, health at every size, which there's a lot of stuff in that I support and I agree with. But then there's also, where we have to find this fine balance of like, but are we missing something else? Like, is there something else to the picture that we're not taking care of the health? And so I just am always cautious to swing one way or the other, because I feel like even with like ideal body weight, let's just go with that one. That made people like anorexic, super thin, right? Like they're just super, like almost no one can achieve the ideal body weight that is out there. But then now I feel like sometimes we're swinging a little bit too far. So we have to find that like happy medium with it.
Yeah. That's a question that I always get. I don't know if you do, but I always get that. Hey, Tanya, like, what's my ideal body weight for me? And I'm like, I don't know. What is it? And they're like, why are you asking me that question?
Right.
Because I'm like, it depends on a lot of things, and it depends on what you need.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So break that down, because I think that's a really good topic to kind of to just share with this audience, because I work with a lot of women that are chronic dieters that feel like that their ideal weight for every woman out there seems to be like 120, which for some people that works, for some people it does not. It really depends on a lot of variables. But what do you share with your clients that ask that question of how to create a healthy weight for them?
Um, First I ask them I mean, what's the meaning of the weight? And a lot of them will be like, well, they do check towards on social media. This is what this person looks like. This is what Vogue says they weigh, like whoever it is. And so it has some kind of attachment to that, no real significant meaning. But then I ask, well, have you ever weighed that much? And sometimes it's like, yeah, when I was in college, but now it's 10 years later and they've had like 2 kids or something. So it's really just kind of breaking down, like, how do you want to feel? I want to feel energetic. I want to feel less tired. I'm tired of chasing migraines, and I really want to feel good in the gym. So then it's more of a discussion of like, okay, well, what are we weighing on the scale when we're weighing in? And that is body tissue, water, poop, food still in your gut, like all the things. Doesn't really measure like body fat. Body fat's more measured like, how does your clothes feel? Are you measuring inches? And so it's kind of removing the focus of a number versus, let's look at aligning your goals with measuring with the right tool.
Yeah.
So, because, somebody who has 50 pounds to lose because they are at like an immediate health risk, yeah, we could absolutely go by weight, because that's what matters most. But if it's somebody who's already relatively like not at significant risk, and they're sounds like they really just want to feel better, but they have this idea that 110 pounds is going to make them feel better because so and so is projecting on social media that they feel better. Right. You have to just make sure that you're measuring with the right tools.
Yeah. Well, and also, including other ways of defining success. Like I feel like there has been a hyper focus on you are only doing it right if the scale is going down. And oftentimes, like, I mean, especially during a plateau or, a shift in hormones, like if a woman's, getting ready to start a period, like we're not going to see all the, healthy behaviors that someone's engaging in. It's not going to show up necessarily on the scale. And so I love just, expanding out how we define that success for health as a whole.
Yeah. And also aligning what your goals are with what your actual values are. That's another one that I see with people, because it'll be like moms that are, you start to have conversations with them. You're able to kind of like tag what they are prioritizing in their life. And it's like family time. I want to be with my kids, blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, hey, I want to come to you for, summertime. I want to have these abs for, my bathing suit, like for vacation. And then you start to kind of tell them, well, this is what that looks like, eating this and being so strict. And you're going to have to, being at the gym multiple times, like what you see, you don't understand what these people are sacrificing to get what they look like. And then they're like, oh, well, that's not really what I want. And I think oftentimes people do get frustrated when they're chasing something that they don't really realize doesn't align with their core values.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's a chase, like to feel or to be like happier oftentimes? Like, do you feel like there's an association, like when they see that person that's at that certain weight, do you feel like there's a connection to the like happiness or joy factor?
I think there is a misleading like assumption that just because they reach a certain weight, yeah, they'll be happier. But then, you'll often see, well, I got this weight and I'm still not that happy.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to be one of those girls that like wanted that 6-pack ab. And then I realized like what had to be done with it. And I just like threw it out the window because I was like, there was no way that I would be happy from a day-to-day perspective. Like I would be such a biatch to be around if I was to achieve that. Like it does not work. So, and I think that aligns with what you said of like, what do you want? What do you want your lifestyle to look like? Like what goals would you like? How would you like to live your life from a day-to-day perspective? Because that's part of also health and how you feel about yourself. So there's so much more that goes into it, and really to redefine that conversation of what it means for the individual, I think is powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of stepping into that, like what do you wish more people knew about prevention or health or nutrition? Like what do you, if you could like just scream at the rooftop and everyone would automatically just like get it, like what do you wish people knew?
I wish that they realized that it's a process. Like everything's a process. It's not something magical. And that it encompasses a lot of different things, not just nutrition. I mean, nutrition is a big thing. I'm not at all downsizing that. But it's that we have to be including like stress mitigation, movement, making sure we're getting adequate amounts of sleep, but quality of sleep, as all of those things really do overlap. And I think people just kind of don't really recognize that. They're just, hey, tell me what to eat so that I can be healthier. Or so I don't have these risk factors or to lose weight. But you can be eating fairly, good or clean or however you want to say. But if you're not doing the other things, you may not be feeling like you're propelling forward, or you may just still feel kind of stuck. So that's what I wish people would really start to recognize, that it is encompassing a lot of different processes in your life.
Yeah. And you're a big one on sleep.
Yes.
Why does that? And I feel like that's, we are oftentimes chronically sleep deprived, especially like, for high performers or, busy moms. Like why does sleep kind of stand out for you in the space of also nutrition? Like how does it impact our nutrition, or how does it impact us behaviorally?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of research out there that from a health perspective is, one, it's good for your mental health, but two, if we are always chronically sleep deprived, it really puts our bodies into like chronic survival mode, not thriving, and in alert. So if we're stressed out from lack of sleep, it can make us less sensitive to insulin. It can drive us to have more cravings throughout the day. It makes us be more prone to like, hey, I'm just going to sit on the couch and lounge and not get our movement in. It has a lot of domino effects with our patterns of how we kind of do our day-to-day activities.
Yeah. Totally. I was shocked at this because sleep is one thing that I really struggle with. Like I've never been a good sleeper, and it's something over the last, I'd say 6 months, I've actively been trying to really, do, what I share with my coaching clients of like, oh, okay, I should probably do this. But it's very, very difficult. What, if we're going to think about this, like we'll just do like the top 3 things. What would be like, what are the top 3 things that people could apply to their lifestyle, like starting today, that you feel would like help them get started on a journey to taking care of their health?
3 things would be having a sleep regimen. That is a big one. And it's not, when I say like a sleep regimen, people often kind of like, oh, you're going to tell me I have to go to bed at 8 or 9 because they know me. My husband will tell everyone 9 o'clock. She's like, I got 30 more minutes and I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
It's not that you have to go to bed super early. It's just have a regular sleep wake cycle. If you want to go to bed at 11 o'clock, go to bed at 11 o'clock every single night. Wake up at the same time, not just every other day or Monday through Friday. Do it the same on the weekends too. And that's one that you can implement. The other one is 20-30 minutes walks every day. And it doesn't have to be all at one time. I understand some of us are like really busy, especially when we're like, during this pandemic, we're working, we're being the teachers for our kids now. We have a lot on our plate. So sometimes it is literally, well, where do you want me to find this 30 minutes to walk? Right. And so it's just recognizing it doesn't have to be 30-minute block. You can do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at lunch, 10 minutes before you go to bed. But get some movement in and be purposeful about it. The other one is another favorite of mine is eat more vegetables.
Can never go wrong.
Like 80% of Americans right now aren't meeting their vegetable requirements. I see that with every single person that I've onboarded. So I know that that's true. Yeah. But yeah, eat more vegetables. You should have like a serving or 2 for every single meal. Make it an equal serving of what your protein is. But you can't not go wrong there. And if it's, a lot of people will say vegetables don't stay fresh long enough, and like buy the frozen ones. There's nothing wrong with the frozen ones. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with canned ones. If you want to do that, you just have to, really watch the labels and, try and do some of that in moderation, but we don't have to be perfect in that area at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we get so bogged down by those like minute details almost. And, and I feel like, frozen and canned vegetables totally got a bad rap. But they are fantastic, and we could, definitely modify them. It really counts is consuming them, like actually getting them into our diet. So however you can do that, that's what works.
Right.
Okay. Well, you take care of a lot of people. You have a lot of hats. How do you take care of you?
I do. I used to be terrible at this, but I've gotten a lot better. But I do a checkpoint with myself every day. And I learned my checkpoint usually is best in the morning. So whether I feel like getting up or not, I most likely will get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning before the entire world is awake. That's my alone time. It's my time to charge my batteries. And I started recognizing this as something essential for me, because there was times where I wouldn't do it. And I'd be like, I really just need to get the sleep. And I would sleep in that extra hour. And then the rest of the day, I would either be kind of crummy or bad, like in a crummy mood or
yeah.
But then I was like, okay, I'm recognizing this trend when I have my time to recharge my batteries. I'm much better, regardless if I thought I needed that extra hour of sleep. So I just have a checkpoint with myself. I do prioritize my sleep always. That's a non-negotiable for me. And I make sure that I get movement in every day. Those are my three big things.
What is a checkpoint?
So, I mean, it's for me, a checkpoint is a dedicated time where I'm saying, what do I need today? How do I feel? Because that changes by day. Sometimes, if I'm feeling like really under recovered, then I will be like, what I need today is to not work out. And before I would just work out every single day that I had off from the hospital, because it was like, those are the only days I'm getting it in. But I didn't really recognize that I may not even need to work out on some days. It may just be a walk that I need, an active recovery day, and giving myself permission for that. And it could be sometimes a matter of, I need to unplug from the world. Like, you probably might recognize this. Like, we're all on social media. That's kind of what we do. That's how we are doing our business. And you can get carried away with that. And I'm like, I need to unplug, like completely unplug. And so that's a checkpoint for me, is specifically asking myself, how do I feel? And what do I need to make this better?
Well, I love that. And I also love how you said non-negotiable, because I create that so many times with coaching clients of like, what is your non-negotiable? Like, what are the things that you are unwilling to compromise on, because you're allowed to have some of those things to continue to take care of yourself. And I always say, like, we just have to put you as part of the equation, because right now, like, you're not even part of the equation. So how can we slowly get you there? But I think the set point idea, I love that. And I've never heard it described that way, but it's really that time where you're checking in with you. Did it, like, to create that, because that's actually a high level self-awareness, and that can be really hard, one, to even recognize, and then two, to be able to allow yourself to engage in what you do need.
Yeah.
Like, was it hard to create for yourself, or what did that look like?
I mean, I'll just be real upfront and honest. Like, there was several years ago where I just wasn't in a good place mentally. And I worked with a therapist, and he helped, like, kind of embed that. And kind of like you said, a lot of moms, they don't have themselves in the equation of what they're doing. And so everything gets kind of put in the back seat. And then when the brakes hit hard, everything from the back seat goes in the front seat. And you're like, what do I do with all this shit? So
it is everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just kind of where that came from. And as I started implementing that practice, I realized how much of a difference that was making in my world, and like for my kids and for my husband. And like, I'm going to say, like, we have to keep reassessing that, because things do change. It's not like it's like one thing and it stays that way forever.
Yeah.
My husband's really good at that though, too. If he sees me kind of like getting a little off, he's gonna be like, hey, what are you doing for yourself? And then I'm like, oh, let me get back to doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that, because it taps into that accountability factor, right? Like, we have to be accountable to ourselves, to others, and then also typically someone that's a little bit further along. And like, the most successful people that I know have someone in their house that is keeping them accountable to what they know they need. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Yeah, because sometimes, like, especially with your, like, if you're like spiraling, sometimes you can't catch it. And so it's always helpful to have someone else that's like, hey, you got to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. So true. Okay. So we'll start winding down. I feel like I could ask you so many more questions, but what I always like to leave on a really positive note, and continue to build women up in particular. So I always like to hear what women are proud of themselves for. So, what is something or many things that you are proud of you for achieving?
Um, I liked this question because I was like, I've never been asked this before. So naturally we're just kind of like, okay, what is that? But for me, knowing where I've come from, I used to be a huge like people pleaser. I think a lot of us are. Like I would burn myself down just trying to just please everyone else. And I think as I've kind of evolved with having a lot of other people's support in my corner, just having accomplished a sense of self and self direction, which I think is so important for anyone to have, for them to
Wow.
be successful for whatever they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. I just got goosebumps when you said that. But like, and I mean, I know a little bit about your story as well. And I think just to be able to create that you are an entity in and of itself, um, and not having to even, you have purpose and being even outside of what you can give to others, I think is a really important shift, but also really, really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is certainly something to be proud about. So I'm really glad that you shared that because I think a lot of us, men and women, really struggle with that. Okay. Anything else that you'd like to share? Any nuggets? So how can people keep in contact with you, or do you have any programs that you're going to be hosting? What does that look like?
You can find me on Instagram. It's alpha underscore nutrition underscore Tanya. And then I have a Facebook group that I love to go in and educate on. So I'm always encouraging like engagement. Um, and that is Alpha Nutrition with Tanya.
Cool. Yeah, I always learn so much. I think I've read your Facebook group more than I've actually read the new dietary guidelines because they're just they're
Dietary guidelines, it's like a long list,
it
but
was
I'm
so
still working on it.
yeah. I mean, I did read through and like to see the new recommendations, but I was like, I saw you like starting to post a lot of the different things, and I was like, I might tune into this a little bit more. So well, thank you so much for being a part of this. I so appreciate it. And if individuals want to reach out to you, they can certainly do so on Instagram or on Facebook.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.